Sometimes the strongest connections come from places we never expect. This is a story about friendship, trust, and that invisible line where comfort turns into something deeper, something real. I used to think my best friend was joking whenever she teased me about how close we were. I'd laugh it off, tell her she was being ridiculous. But that night, when her eyes met mine with a kind of sincerity I hadn't noticed before, I realized it wasn't a joke. And from that moment, everything between us started to feel different. Friendship is a strange thing. It grows quietly without you even realizing it, until one day you look back and see how much space it has taken in your life. For me, that person was Lila. We met during our junior year of high school in a cramped art room that smelled of turpentine and wet clay. She was Theone, who could fill silence with color, who turned blank canvases into storms of emotion with a flick of her wrist. I was the quiet observer, the one who noticed how light fractured through the window and landed on her collarbone like a secret. Somehow, we balanced each other out, from late-night sketch sessions to long walks along the river where we'd collect smooth stones and pretend they held memories. We built something steady, a rhythm, a trust. Lila was the one I led when the world felt too sharp, and I was the one she turned to when her confidence cracked like dried paint. By the time we graduated, our bond felt unbreakable, almost like family, which is why that Friday night caught me off guard. It was supposed to be another simple hangout. I showed up at her apartment carrying way too many takeout boxes, the smell of pad thai and spring rolls filling the hallway. She opened the door with her usual grin, paint still smudged on her cheek, wearing an oversized flannel that swallowed her frame, and that same electric energy that made everything feel possible. "Delivery artist," she said dramatically, bowing low. "Come in, my muse." I rolled my eyes, setting the food down on the coffee table cluttered with brushes and half-finished canvases. "Pretty sure muses get paid," I joked. "You'll be compensated with gratitude and noodles," she replied, handing me a mango lassi. We fell into our familiar rhythm. Food, laughter, and an indie film we'd already watched too many times. Lila sprawled across the couch while I sat cross-legged on the floor, trying not to drip chili sauce on her sketchbook. Halfway through the movie, the sound of her laughter filled the room like wind chimes. Lila shifted, stretching out lazily beside me. "You ever think about the future?" she asked suddenly, her tune softer than usual. I glanced over. "What do you mean? Like where we'll be in 10 years? She shrugged, twirling a strand of her dark hair around her finger. "Yeah, if we'll still be doing this, just the two of us. Maybe we should make a pact," I laughed. "A pact for what?" She smiled, eyes bright with that wild creativity that always made my chest ache. "That no matter what happens, we don't lose this. Us. The way we are right now." I didn't realize it then. But that simple promise would end up meaning more than either of us could have imagined. "A pact," I repeated. Half laughing, she nodded. "Yeah, that we'll end up together someday." As backup, I froze. The words lingered in the air like incense. She was smiling, eyes playful, but there was something else there. A flicker of honesty she couldn't quite hide. I forced a laugh and tossed a throw pillow at her. "You're ridiculous." She caught it easily, still smirking. "I'm just saying we already know each other better than anyone." Why waste time with strangers when we could just stick together? My chest tightened, though I kept my tone light. "Lila, you've had too much sake." "Maybe," she said with a shrug, turning back to the TV. But she didn't laugh this time. And in that quiet, I realized my heart was racing. That night, when I got home, sleep wouldn't come. I lay staring at the ceiling, her words looping in my mind. We could just be each other's person. I tried to tell myself it was just another joke, but the way her smile had wavered, the way her eyes had softened, it didn't feel like one. And the truth I didn't want to admit was that I didn't want it to be. The next morning, I dragged myself to her usual cafe. Lila was already there, sitting by the window, sipping her iced matcha with that same confident grin, her sketchbook open to a half-finished portrait of someone who looked suspiciously like me. "You look awful," she said as I sat down. "Didn't sleep much," I muttered. She smirked. "What? Too busy dreaming about me?" I froze mid-sip. She said it casually like she always did, but something about it hit differently. Heat crept up my neck and I had to look away. She noticed. For just a second, her grin faded, replaced by something uncertain. I forced a laugh. You wish, Boot inside. My chest ached because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't wrong. The rest of the day went by in pieces. We went to the farmer's market, argued about which tomatoes were ripest, played with the rescue dogs at the adoption booth until our eyes blurred with happy tears. It all looked the same from the outside, but every moment felt charged. Every glance, every laugh, every small touch carried a weight it hadn't before. At one point, our hands brushed as Weboth reached for the same peach. It flinched, not out of discomfort, but from the spark that ran through me. And when I looked up, I realized she'd noticed too. She didn't say anything. Her usual smirk faded into something softer, quieter, something I couldn't quite name. That night, as I stood at her door, I hesitated. I wanted to ask if she'd meant what she said, if that pact, that look had been a joke or something more, but the words wouldn't come. So instead, I just said, "See you tomorrow." She smiled, that same crooked grin I'd seen 100 times before. But for the first time, I realized I no longer knew what always really meant. The days that followed felt different, subtle but unmistakable. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was overthinking one offhand comment. But deep down, I knew better. My body gave it away before my thoughts did. The way my chest tightened when her shoulder brushed mine. The way my pulse quickened when I caught her looking at me just a little too long. I'd known Lila for years. But suddenly, every small thing about her carried new meaning. Her laugh, her voice, even the way she filled the room with color. By Wednesday, we were back to our usual routine, sprawled on our studio floor with charcoal and pastels, locked in a fierce competition to draw the ugliest portrait of each other. Lila leaned forward, focused, tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth as she tried to capture my nose. I tried to do the same, but my attention kept drifting to the smudge of blue paint on her wrist, the curve of her smile, the easy rhythm of her movements. I didn't realize how long I'd been staring until she paused and looked at me. "Earth to you?" she said, her tone teasing but curious. My throat tightened. "No, I'm here. You're just terrible at proportions." She leaned back, smirking. "Uh-huh, sure." But her gaze didn't move away. Steady, quiet, searching. That look made something twist in my chest. I quickly turned back to my sketch, fumbling with the charcoal, trying to act normal, but my hands trembled and she noticed. The tension only built from there. By Friday night, we were back at her place, sharing dumplings like always. We sat cross-legged on the floor, laughing, arguing over chili oil levels, acting like everything was the same. But it wasn't. When we both reached for the last dumpling, our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved. The room went quiet except for the hum of their refrigerator and the distant sound of rain against the window. Lila's eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time, there was no joke, no deflection, just us. "You meant it," I said, barely above a whisper. "The pact." She didn't look away. "Yeah," she said softly. I did. The air between us felt electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. It swallowed hard. "And if I said I've been thinking about it too?" Her breath caught. Just for a second. Then she smiled, not her usual wild, carefree grin, but something smaller, realer. "Then maybe," she said, "we don't need a backup plan." I laughed, shaky and relieved, and leaned forward until our foreheads touched. The dumpling sat forgotten between us. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, something new was beginning, and for the first time, always felt like a promise we might actually keep. The pizza box sat open between us like a fragile treaty, steam curling from the pepperoni in lazy spirals. Jordan reached for the last slice at the exact second I did. Our fingers collided, warm, calloused from guitar strings on his end, ink-stained from late-night sketches on mine. It meant nothing. A simple accident. But the spark that passed between us was undeniable. I froze, staring at our hands, too afraid to move. He didn't pull away either. His fingers lingered against mine for just a moment too long before he quietly picked up the slice, breaking the contact with a small, almost apologetic smile. When I finally looked up, his eyes were on me. Not teasing, not playful, but steady and unreadable, the way they got when he was working out a new chord progression in his head. My chest tightened. I looked away quickly, pretending to focus on my drink. But the silence that filled the room was heavy, charged with something I couldn't bring myself to name. The movie played on, some indie film Jordan had picked because the soundtrack slaps, but I barely registered it. The apartment smelled like garlic and rain-soaked city air drifting in through the cracked window. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with distant sirens and the low throb of someone's bass-heavy playlist. Jordan shifted closer on the couch. His knee brushed against mine. At first, I told myself it was an accident, but he didn't move. I could feel the warmth radiating between us, a quiet electricity that made it hard to breathe. Still, I forced myself to stay still because deep down, I knew if I acknowledged it, everything would change. After a long pause, his voice broke the silence. "Be honest with me," he said quietly. I turned toward him, startled. "About what?" He hesitated for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Have you ever thought about it? About us?" The words hit me like a jolt. My mouth went dry. "About what do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He didn't look away. His eyes stayed locked on mine, serious, vulnerable, and searching. "About being more than just friends." My heartbeat thundered in my chest. I wanted to laugh it off, to make a joke, to erase the tension, but I couldn't. His gaze was too honest, too real. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "Jordan," I whispered. Silence hung between us, fragile, uncertain. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. Then just as quickly, he smirked and leaned back. "Relax, man. I'm just messing with you." He grabbed the remote and hit play, his focus fixed on the screen like nothing had happened. But I knew he wasn't joking. And the part that scared me most, neither was I. The rest of the weekend, his words echoed in my head. "Have you ever thought about it?" The truth was, I had. I just never let myself admit it because admitting it meant risking everything. Our friendship, our history, the one person who truly knew me. But once the question had been asked, I couldn't unhear it. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way his laugh cracked open a room like sunlight through blinds. The way his voice softened when he said my name, like it was something fragile he didn't want to drop. The way his scent, cedar and coffee and something indefinably him, lingered on my hoodie after I borrowed it during a late-night walk home. I hated how much I noticed, and worse, how much I wanted. By Sunday night, after another long day at his place, I walked home beneath the glow of city lights, lost in thought. Was I imagining it all? Was Jordan serious? Or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? But deep down, I already knew the truth. There was something between us, something unspoken, something real. And whether I liked it or not, it was growing stronger every day. Monday bled into Tuesday, then Wednesday. We texted like always, memes, song recommendations, complaints about subway delays, but there was a new weight to every message, a hesitation, a what if. Jordan's band had a gig Thursday night at a dive bar in Bushwick. He'd been nervous about it all week, pacing his apartment while tuning his guitar for the 100th time. "It's just a small crowd," he'd said, but I knew it mattered. This was the first show with their new drummer, and the venue had a rep for booking acts that actually went somewhere. I showed up early, sliding into a corner booth with a clear view of the stage. The place smelled like spilled beer and old wood, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes for days. Jordan spotted me from the side door and waved, his grin wide and boyish, the one that made my stomach flip without permission. The set was electric. Jordan owned the stage, hair falling into his eyes, fingers flying over the strings, voice raw and pleading on the chorus of "They're Closer." When the last note faded, the crowd roared. I clapped until my hands stung, pride swelling in my chest like a tide. Afterward, he found me at the bar, sweat damp and glowing. "You came," he said, like he hadn't believed I would. Wouldn't miss it. I handed him a water. Our fingers brushed again. This time, neither of us flinched. We ended up outside, leaning against the brick wall while the rest of the band loaded gear. The night was cool, the sky a deep indigo smudged with clouds. Jordan lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his face. "You were incredible," I said. He exhaled, smoke curling into the air. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." He looked at me then, really looked, and the teasing fell away. "I wasn't messing with you," he said quietly. "The other night. I meant it." My pulse stuttered. "I know." He took a step closer. "And I've thought about it," I admitted. "More than I should." His eyes searched mine. "What are we doing, Eli?" "I don't know," I said, "but I don't want to stop." Friday night, the storm rolled in. I'd been at Jordan's all afternoon, helping him rearrange his apartment for the third time that month. Feng shui, he'd claimed, but really he just couldn't decide where to put the amp. By the time the rain started, the place was tidier, the windows fogged with humidity. "Looks like you're stuck here tonight," Jordan said, peering out the window as lightning flashed across the street. Rain pounded against the glass, the wind howling through the fire escape. I laughed softly, trying to sound casual, even as a knot formed in my chest. "I can walk. It's not far." He turned toward me, raising an eyebrow. "You really want to risk pneumonia just because you don't want to crash on my couch?" His voice was light, teasing, but beneath it I heard something quieter. "Stay." I sighed, giving in. "Fine. You win." "Good," he said, grinning as he pulled 2 blankets from the closet. "Guess it's a storm night marathon then." We ended up on the couch wrapped in blankets, half watching The Princess Bride for the 1,000th time. The storm outside roared louder and louder, thunder rolling across the sky, rain hitting the windows like a steady drumbeat. But it wasn't the weather that filled my thoughts. It was him. The quiet way his shoulder brushed mine beneath the blanket. The warmth radiating between us. The soft laugh that always came just a second before mine. Halfway through the film, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then went out completely. The screen faded to black. The low hum of the apartment vanished, replaced only by the sound of the storm outside. "Well," Jordan said after a moment, his tone almost amused, "guess it's just us now." Something in his voice made my heartbeat quicken. I turned toward him, barely able to make out his face in the dim light spilling through the rain-streaked window. His eyes caught the faint glow, steady and unreadable. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavy, like the air was waiting for something to happen. "Jordan," I started quietly, unsure what I was even trying to say. He shifted closer. "You know, I meant what I said before." My breath caught. The room felt smaller, the world quieter. Before I could respond, he reached out, hesitant, uncertain, and the distance between us disappeared. It wasn't sudden or bold, just honest, like a moment that had been waiting to happen for too long. His hand found mine first, then my cheek, then, slowly, carefully, his lips brushed mine. Soft, tentative, real. When we finally pulled back, silence filled the space again. The storm outside crashed against the city, but inside, everything felt still. Jordan's voice broke through, soft and trembling. "Tell me I didn't just mess everything up." My throat tightened, words barely forming. I reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "You didn't ruin anything," I said, barely above a whisper. He searched my eyes then, uncertain but hopeful. And for the first time, I didn't look away. "You mean that?" I nodded. "Yeah, I do." The relief that washed over his face nearly broke me. He leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against mine. "I've wanted to tell you for so long," he admitted, his voice shaking. "I was just scared I'd lose you if I ever said it out loud." My chest tightened as emotions swelled inside me. "You're not going to lose me, Jordan. Not now. Not ever." Later, when the power came back and the storm had softened to a steady drizzle, we stayed on the couch, blankets tangled, hands linked, the movie forgotten. Jordan traced slow circles on the back of my hand with his thumb. "So what happens now?" he asked, voice quiet. I thought about it. About the years of inside jokes and late-night talks and the way he'd always been the first person I called when things fell apart. About the risk, about the reward. "Now," I said, "we figure it out together." He smiled, small, real, and mine. I liked the sound of that. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, for the first time in a long time, everything felt still and right. The rain came down in sheets that night, hammering the old warehouse windows like it wanted in. Inside, the air smelled of wet concrete and the faint ozone of the lightning that kept flashing outside. Jamie and I had ducked in here hours ago, laughing about some stupid bet we'd made back at the bar, something about who could outdrink the other without regretting it. The joke had died somewhere between the third round and the moment the sky split open. We were soaked through, shivering, and the only dry spot was a narrow ledge beneath the broken skylight. Jamie peeled off his leather jacket, wrung it out, and draped it over my shoulders without asking. His fingers brushed the back of my neck, and I felt the jolt more than the cold. "Still think you won?" he asked, voice low, teasing. I rolled my eyes. "You're the one who looks like a drowned cat." He laughed, short, surprised, the sound echoing off the metal walls. Then the thunder cracked so loud the floor vibrated, and the laugh cut off. We stood there, inches apart, breathing hard. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one suddenly roaring in my chest. Jamie's hand found mine in the dark. Not playful. Not accidental. His thumb traced the inside of my wrist like he was reading something written there. I didn't pull away. When he leaned in, it wasn't tentative. It was the kind of kiss that had been waiting years to happen. Messy, desperate, tasting of rain and whiskey, and the kind of fear that makes you reckless. My back hit the wall. His hand slid under the jacket, under my shirt, palms warm against the chill. I kissed him back like I'd been starving for it. Time stopped. The storm kept raging, but inside that warehouse, everything went still. Later, we sat on a stack of old crates, knees touching, sharing the last of the warmth from his jacket. The rain had softened to a steady patter. Jamie stared at the floor, jaw tight. "I don't want this to be a drunk mistake," he said. So quietly I almost missed it. I turned to him. "It's not." He looked up, eyes searching mine. "You sure? Because tomorrow, when the sun's up and the hangover hits, I don't want you looking at me like I'm just the guy who got you out of the rain." I reached out, pushed the wet hair off his forehead. "I've been looking at you like that for years, Jamie. I just didn't know what to call it." His breath hitched. Then he smiled. Not the cocky grin he used to deflect everything, but something small and real. It cracked me open. That night, as the storm finally moved on and the first gray light crept through the broken windows, I realized Jamie wasn't just the idiot who'd once tried to teach me to skateboard and ended up in the ER. He was the person I'd been orbiting without realizing it. And now that we'd collided, there was no going back. The weeks after were a tightrope. We still met at the same dive bar on Thursdays. Still argued over who owed who the next round. Still sent each other memes at 2 a.m. that made no sense to anyone else. But now, every time our eyes met across the room, something electric passed between us. Every accidental brush of shoulders felt deliberate. Every silence was loaded. I kept waiting for the regret. For the moment, one of us would laugh it off and say, "We were drunk, right?" But it never came. Instead, the wanting grew. One night, we were walking along the pier after a late shift at the record store where Jamie worked. The water was black glass, reflecting the boardwalk lights in fractured gold. The air smelled of salt and fried food and the faint sweetness of summer ending. We walked in silence until I couldn't stand it. "Jamie." He stopped, hands shoved deep in his hoodie. "Yeah? What are we doing?" He frowned. "Walking? No, us. Are we just friends who got carried away? Or is this—" I gestured between us, helpless. "Is this something?" He stared at the water for a long time. Then, "I've been in love with you since the night you cried in my car because your dad missed your graduation. You fell asleep on my shoulder and I didn't move for 3 hours because I didn't want to wake you. I told myself it was just friendship, that I was being stupid. But it wasn't. It never was." The words hit like a wave. I remembered that night, how safe I'd felt, how his heartbeat had been the only steady thing in the world. "I thought if I said it out loud, you'd laugh," he continued, voice rough. "Or worse, you'd stop needing me. So I made it a joke. The flirting, the bets, the way I'd show up at your door with takeout when you were sad, all of it, just to stay close." I stepped forward, took his face in my hands. "You absolute moron. I was terrified you'd never see me as anything more than the friend who once set your kitchen on fire trying to make pancakes." He laughed, shaky and wet. "You did set my kitchen on fire. And you still let me back in." He kissed me then, right there on the pier, with the gulls crying overhead and the Ferris wheel lights spinning slow. It wasn't rushed. It was a promise. After that, we stopped pretending. We still bickered over music. Him with his vinyl obsession. Me with my playlists, but now when he won, he'd pull me close and kiss the argument right out of me. We still crashed on each other's couches, but now I woke up with his arm around my waist and his breath warm against my neck. The fear didn't vanish. It just changed shape. What if our friends thought it was weird? What if his mom, who'd known me since I was 15 in braces, looked at me differently? What if the thing that had always been easy between us turned into something we had to work at? We tested the waters slowly. At the bar one night, our friend Lena slid into the booth beside us, eyes sharp. "You two are glowing. Spill." Jamie's hand found mine under the table. "Just happy," he said, casual. Lena raised an eyebrow. "Happy like finally banged, or happy like finally admitted you're in love?" I choked on my beer. Jamie just grinned. "Both." Lena whooped so loud the bartender looked over. And just like that, the secret was out. Not everyone was Lena. Jamie's older brother cornered him the next week. "You sure about this?" "She's practically family." Jamie didn't flinch. "She is family, just the kind I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life." I wasn't there, but he told me later, voice steady. "I meant it. The first time we fought as a couple, it was over something stupid, whose turn it was to do dishes. But it escalated fast, years of unspoken habits crashing into new boundaries. I stormed out. He let me. An hour later, he showed up at my door with a pizza and a sheepish grin. "I hate fighting with you. Feels like losing my favorite song." I let him in. We ate cold pizza on the floor and talked until dawn. Not about dishes. About fear. About how love wasn't just the easy parts. About how we were still learning the shape of this thing between us. 1 year later, we stood on the same pier where we'd first said it out loud. The air was crisp, the sky a deep indigo. Jamie pulled a small box from his pocket. "I'm not good at speeches," he said, voice shaking. "But I've had practice. I love you. Not just the fun parts. The messy parts. The 3 a.m. panic attacks. The way you steal my hoodies and never give them back. I want all of it, forever. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple silver, engraved with the date of the warehouse night. I cried. He cried. The gulls didn't care. Yes, I said. 1,000 times yes. We got married on a rooftop in October, city lights below us like a promise. Lena was my best woman. Jamie's brother gave a speech that made everyone cry. We danced to the song we'd argued over the first week we moved in together. Love had always been there, hidden in the way he'd save the last slice of pizza for me, in the way I'd text him dumb jokes when he was having a bad day. It had grown in the silences, in the glances, in the years of choosing each other without knowing it. What started as a storm and a joke became the quiet certainty of coming home. Jamie wasn't just my best friend anymore. He was my partner, my safe place, my future, and together we chose love, no matter the weather.